Hello and welcome to another episode of the Expanse Abridged Podcast series. Today we have chapter 22, which is a Miller chapter, obviously from our first book, Leviathan Wakes. And it's a bit of a short one today. It's a smaller chapter, but we get Miller. As we discussed last time, he's on the move. So when we last saw Miller, he'd lost his job, he'd been fired, he drank for a bit, then he decided, you know what, fuck it, I'm going to hallucinate. Imagine Julie Mao. I'm going to go find her down. And he spoke to Havelock, who gave him some tips about where to go, and he had some tickets on the way to Eros. And as we join again with Miller now, he's on the way to Eros, and he's in a people mover. So because he has not much money was the big thing. He had a really, really cheap ticket. So he's on this spaceship, which is just the equivalent of like shitty Ryanair. It seems more like a step above people smuggling, but it's pretty bad. So it's got lights with cheap LEDs tinted a false pink that was supposed to flatter the complexion, but instead made everyone look like undercooked beef. There were no cabins, only row after row of formed laminate seating, with 5 stacks of bunks at the front. And if there was ever a fight, the crew would pump riot gas into the cabin, knock everyone out, and then restrain whoever started the fight. And the only reason it works is because the bar is very cheap on this ship. And our boy Miller, he's sat there and he's mulling. He's just kind of being his miserable little dude, and he's having a look at Julie's case file, and a photo of her smiling is glowing before him. In the background, there's the news going on, and the main news articles about Mars and Belt, the incidents increasing, kind of the war, this shadow war, getting larger and larger. And there's a Martian correspondent taking it to Earth, being like, "Yo, why'd you abandon Ceres?" Which is obviously when they changed the security contract, and it's like, why didn't you give the security contract to Mars rather than... I can't entirely remember what happened last time, but it's just like, why didn't they help them out more effectively? And then Miller nearly makes a friend. A bloke comes over, similar age, soft in the belly, and Miller thinks he's a missionary because of the vibe he has, but also the name tag in the Bible. And they kind of joke about how all the pews lined up in a row looking forward at the bunk beds is like a weird kind of church vibe. And Miller jokes it's Our Lady of Sleeping Through It, which the missionary quite likes. They kind of talk about God for a bit, and Miller was like, "I used to be a Methodist when I was anything, but not anymore. But what kind of religion are you selling? Because what flavour are you selling?" Which is quite a good quote. And the missionary's like, "Nah, man, I'm just here to chat. My it's proselytizing days. I had Google speaking a minute ago, but anyway, his preaching days are done for him now. He's been to some conferences. He's chilling out. He's just an old boy." And he says, "I still travel. I still talk to people. Sometimes I talk about Jesus. Sometimes I talk about cooking. If someone is ready to accept Christ, it doesn't take much effort on my part to help them. If they aren't, no amount of hectoring does them any good. So why try?" So he's a chill, he's retired, he hasn't got time for this shit kind of missionary. And they talk about the war, if anyone ever makes sense of it. He says no one does, but war is part of our nature. It's madness. It's the herpes simplex of the species. And he says it'll be with us as long as we're human. And they have a little debate about if some religions believe we'll be angels eventually, and then we won't have war. But it's also a bit of ominous foreshadowing of the bloke you meet on the train goes, "We'll be fighting until we're no longer human," which is just kind of a weird one to open up with. It's obviously foreshadowing for the book, but yeah, just the saying like, "Yeah, we'll keep doing this as long as we're human," then leaving is a very weird vibe. Then they chat a bit about Miller, why he's moving, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I've lost my contract, I'm moving out." It's only his 5th time ever off series. And he thinks that's part of his life is pretty over. And the missionary asks if it feels bad for him. And Miller he mulls it all over. He rotates his memories like an orb in his mind. And he thinks about the little East Indian cart at the edge of Sector 9, which obviously we all know and love. And thinks about he's no longer a cop. He hasn't got his community. The cop bars, the fights, all that stuff's gone. But he didn't. Did it hurt? Did he feel the loss there? He didn't. There was only a sense of relief so profound it approached giddiness. "I'm sorry," the missionary said, confused. "Did I say something funny?" Oh, our boy Miller, he's just happy to be out, really. So then he heads off, and we're in Eros now. So Eros is described as a population of 1.5 million, which is a little more than Ceres had in visitors at any time. So it's a lot smaller than Ceres, because Ceres was one of the larger asteroids. And the internal cavern, we get some background. Eros had been like the birthplace of the belt. It's one of the first ones that had been colonized, and all the ore had been stripped out of it. The caverns turned into big ports, and all the ships have been built there for the rest of the kind of the expansion into the belt. But since then, it's moved on. It's become a bit of an industrial, quieter area. With Ceres, there's more stuff to do there, bigger ships, more people, etc., etc. And because of that, because Ceres is quieter, it's cheaper to park your ship there, which means when people went there, they stayed a bit longer, which means an industry of kind of entertainment appeared. And so with lower docking fees, people could stay longer. And Eros Station found other ways to soak money from its visitors: casinos, brothels, shooting galleries, vice in all its commercial forms. The local economy blooming like a fungus fed on the desires of belters, which is quite a nice one. And another fungus, similarly. And he's a wander through, and he's waiting for the Rocinante, our boy Miller, and he notices he's there a bit before, and he has to walk through the cheap casinos, the opioid bars and sex clubs, where people, and there's an arenas where people fight to the death, or at least appear to, like gladiator style, which is pretty metal. And he bumps into an old friend, Inspector Sematimba, who they'd worked on a previous case where two kind of competing organisations had tried to fight each other to get it sealed, like completed, because obviously these are all private security firms, and he was the Miller and this other guy would talk outside of the loop to kind of resolve the issues, that's their backstory while they're friends. And they basically chat like, well, why are you here, what's up? And Sematimba, who is also obviously a cop, is saying the Protogen pulled out, who had the security ring, and a new contractor called Carne por la Machina, which is meat for the machine, kind of takes over, and it's a load of belters, and he's like, they're all thugs, they're amateurs, they don't know what's going on, they keep breaking heads and causing fights, they're very bad security. Whereas Protogen was as nails, wouldn't take shit, but they did actually keep law and order. Miller kind of explains he's on sabbatical, asks about Julie, the bloke's like, I got no idea, but why? And Miller's like, it's related to the war. And Sematimba's like, alright, that's a shit joke. I consider us friends, old man, but I don't want any trouble around here. Things are unsettled as it stands. And then an alarm goes off in the background, and Sematimba wanders away. And Miller kind of has to just deal with, he just ends up finishing his noodles, checks the time, and goes off to find the Rocinante. So the point there we're kind of learning is that the security on Eros is a bunch of thugs, it's not proper security anymore, and Protogen, where Havelock has gone, and we've heard a couple times elsewhere that story, is like big serious boys do the job properly. So Miller then wanders off, and he kind of mulls again about the design of Ceres. So obviously you said it's all about vice, which is quite a good description. Sorry, a good word anyway. But it's all about the vice, and because of that, it's structured such that every floor, every route in and out of the station always goes through the casino floor. And everyone basically just loves the casino, especially from the docks. And greed and casino design to turn Eros into an architectural cattle run, which is exactly what Miller needed. He accepted a drink from a tired woman in a G-string and bared breasts to find a screen to stand at that afforded him a view of all 6 doors. And he basically just set up a trap whereby he's going to watch all the doors because everyone has to walk in through the casino and in Ceres. And he's going to wait for the Rocinante crew to arrive. And he pretends to sip his drink and settles in to wait. And end of the chapter. It's only a little short one. But it's fun. So yeah, our boy Miller, he's now set up in position to go find Holden and the boys, and we're going to have a crossover very soon between our two favourite gentlemen. So yeah, hope you enjoyed that, and I hope you have a lovely week.